Welcome to the Praying and Slaying Podcast, a Light the Fire Outdoors production, where meatheads Aaron and John take you through a day in the life of the praying and slaying lifestyle. Without further ado, here's the next episode of the Praying and Slaying Podcast.
How's it going, guys? Aaron and Jeremy here with the Praying and Slaying Podcast, coming at you again with another episode. And haven't talked to Jeremy. It's been 2 weeks. We tried to connect last week, and it didn't really happen. How's your last week been?
You know, it's been a little bit crazy, but that's good. I mean, work's just been busy and all that stuff. So, officially done with hunting season. I trimmed my beard, so I no longer.
Did you?
Yeah. No longer look like a crazy mountain man. You know, my son, he's 2 years old. He thought it was he didn't know what to think. He wanted my beard back, and that can't really happen. So,
you could just put it in like one of your wife's hair ties or something, and let him run around the house with it.
Yeah, well, it kind of made a little bit of a mess. So, you know. Oh shoot! But no, it's been good.
Good. Yeah, I broke tradition this year. Normally, I do grow a beard out, like just let it grow continuously until I shoot my buck. And this year, it would have taken me all the way to the last day of rifle season, which, I mean, I would have had really something going there. But I didn't let it, I never lost the scruff beard, but I never let it grow all the way out either. The longest it got was probably half of what it normally is.
Yeah, I'm still in the scruff beard. I haven't gone to the straight goatee yet. I'm trying to hold off a little bit, but you know, next event I have that requires me to clean up, I'll be back on the goatee train probably until this fall. So
there you go. Yeah, I was at my I traveled back to Iowa for some sales meetings and ended up staying back. My parents, I grew up there, so my parents, I stayed with them for a little bit to kind of see those guys and that side of the family. And my dad I used to, for those podcast listeners who've seen me in person, they know I used to have a giant mustache, which is half of the logo there, along with John's got a pretty epic mustache. And so he was showing me a picture of what's called a monkey tail mustache. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't.
You need to Google it.
Is that safe to search on Google? Or
I think so. Just make sure you include the word mustache so it doesn't. I don't know what monkey tail would bring up, but it's so basically it's like a.
Oh my gosh, that is the most hideous thing ever.
Isn't that awesome? I don't know. I thought about, just now that I know what it is, there might be a point in time where I try it. I'll just let it grow until I need to shave, and then I'll buzz it like that, and maybe we'll post a picture of. But I don't know if the way that. So basically, it's kind of like a goatee, but one half of your face, your cheek and up to your sideburn is completely shaved, so there's no hair there. And then it runs from your sideburn down on the other side along your jowl line, over your chin and up around the top of your lip, and stops before it connects back to the other side of your mouth. So it looks like a monkey tail wrapping around your lips, basically.
I think you should do that when you shave here tomorrow morning and take a picture and put it in the show notes.
Perfect. No, yeah, and the show notes would be the best place. I don't trust it being in your hands for social media's sake.
Oh, I don't trust it either. I mean, holy cow! What were people thinking when they come up with that? That's the question.
Who knows, man?
And furthermore, how does your dad know about this trend more? Before you or I do. I mean,
honestly, who knows? I'm sure it was something he found on social media, or just who knows, honestly. But the worst one I've ever seen was, and actually Jennifer, one of the office admins at Tacticam, she sent me an email after I shaved the mustache, the handlebar mustache, and they sent me one saying that I was going to grow one for an ugly sweater contest. And it was basically like a Fu Manchu, but it keeps rolling down the guy's neck, runs down the middle of his chest, and wraps around both of his nipples.
Oh, man. That's a bad visual. We better.
It's pretty.
Let's talk about some big bucks or something.
We got to get off of it. It's clearly going downhill. Yeah, look off this happy trail.
Some grip and grin pictures of that, or trail cam pictures or something.
Sure. No, for sure, man. Well, that's what. Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about today anyway. I mean, 2020 is behind us. It's officially 2021. man, I did more hunting, I think, this year than ironically enough, I thought this year for sure I wouldn't have as much time with kind of that. We had a new product launch at Tacticam right in the middle of hunting season was our busiest time. And, that went absolutely nuts. They launched the Reveal trail cameras there, #1 selling trail camera first year out of the gate. So that was cool. But I mean, just kept us in the sales department super busy. But I ended up, looking back, that was kind of the cool thing about having a Tacticam, like looking back over all the different videos at the end of the year that I've collected from, everything. I think I did a little bit of everything: waterfowl, deer, and you and I both ended up with elk. Turkeys like crazy this spring. The only thing I didn't check off my list this year was a black bear.
Yeah. I took in. I didn't check off turkeys, but I got lots of deer, antelope, elk.
Oh, yeah, antelope too.
Deer, elk, antelope, pheasant. I got some pheasant, and I got footage of that, and then some geese. I don't know if I shot ducks in the blind, but I was waterfowling, so either way.
Yeah, I wish I would have got a couple geese. I didn't end up with any geese this year. Several ducks. Got some golden. I think the species I ended up with were goldeneye, mallard, widgeon. Didn't get any shovelers. My buddy got a couple shovelers. Those are pretty cool. That's one of my ones. I think if I ever shoot a northern shoveler, I want to get that one mounted. And then end up with some. I like them, man. They got the bright green head, the big bill on them. That brown on their chest, white bellies. Okay. The males just look cool. We get a ton of them up here by Great Falls.
Midwestern guys, I guess ducks don't taste ducks don't taste that great anyways, but
I don't know. I would argue with you on that, man. My father-in-law came up. I might have told you this on the ride down. I'll tell the listeners, I guess. My father-in-law came up, and there was 2 things he was just absolutely hell-bent on that he thought were bad tasting because of stories he's heard. And he's never, he's eaten duck, but he's never eaten antelope. So his 2 things, and I told him, I said, well, we've got plenty of stuff to eat up here. We'll broaden your horizons a little bit. He's like, oh, dude, duck's disgusting. I'll never eat that again in my life. And then antelope is all I've ever heard about is it tastes like crap. And I was like, well, your daughter would beg to differ with you on both of those. And if she can eat them, I would say you can. So we actually Christmas Day before dinner, I got some duck out, and it was I think I had widgeon in there, and was it ringneck? No, gadwall. I had widgeon and gadwall that I had just gotten. And anyway, and I don't know which one of them definitely had more of like the waterfowl-y. I don't know. I guess I kind of attribute some of the flavor to like seafood almost. Like you can kind of taste some fishiness to it. And the other one didn't have any of that flavor. So I'm not sure which one was which. I should have marked them on the bags better. But anyway, I fried that up. And I think I've come to the conclusion that waterfowl needs to be cooked like, I don't care if it's goose or duck. Goose I think is better than duck, but either way, they're good. You got to cook them like red meat, man. You got to cook them like you would a steak or a deer loin or something like that. Cook them rare and cook them quick and season them just like you would a steak. Whatever your favorite steak season is, that's about my favorite way to do it. So anyway, I fried these duck breasts up, and I think he ate there was 5 ducks that I had cooked up out of all the meat, and he probably ate 4 ducks worth of meat by himself, just drooling over it. So I don't know. Duck's pretty good.
Yeah, I think some of it depends on where they're living and where you shoot them too. Sometimes they can taste muddy and a little like liver, a little wild, but
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I still hunt them because they're so doggone fun to shoot, and I guess part of that's the other problem. I mean, I took in. I can go goose hunting for one weekend and fill up a freezer, my grizzly cooler, my 60-quart cooler full of geese. You go to eastern Montana and you get 5 per guy per day.
That's awesome.
So you get, I think we went with 7 or 8 people over my birthday weekend, and we got pre-coolers full of geese. So I came back with a full cooler, and it's like, holy cow, what do you make, have more than that than I did out of a whitetail. So
that's insane.
But
definitely more liberal limits than we're used to in the Midwest or even on the East Coast. I think the most it was like 2 a day for geese on the East Coast, if I remember right, when I was out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
But,
Maybe it's because it's harder to shoot geese here and we don't have the great waterfowling opportunities you have in the Midwest. So
yeah, waterfowling up here is tough. I mean, there's really not that many birds. There's really not a lot of habitat for them.
Yeah,
don't come to Montana and waterfowl, I guess, is the message to that.
I guess so. There's a few people that have leases and stuff, and they can figure it out. But
and that's the problem. You got so much private land out here. And, the few and far between places you can hunt them, like you said, they're all landlocked by leases, and
I don't know. I mean, have you experienced much public land waterfowl hunting up in your neck of the woods?
Well, seriously, or the direction we're running with it?
I mean, I'm serious about that because
you're serious.
Because I hunt a lot of fields and stuff, right? And that's how we goose hunt, and that is, I would say that's 100% public land or private land. I mean, not public land.
If you're talking field hunting, for sure. I was totally kidding. The waterfowl up here is amazing, but I think there's plenty of places right here around where I live that have really good waterfowl. It just depends on how many guys are out there that day, honestly, and what the weather's doing.
On the really good waterfowl, it's like probably anything else. You take and you go to, like, I can go out and I can hunt the lakes and the rivers because we have great stream access laws for fishing. Now, keep in mind that you have to be fishing, not hunting. There's some gray areas there. But that doesn't mean that you can't take and throw a fishing pole in your boat and fish downriver and then do a little casting blast and stay between the high and low water marks and still be within the laws there. And there is public land along a lot of our rivers that you can hunt waterfowl. But I guess the definition, what is the definition of good waterfowl hunting? Do you want to go out and hunt and shoot a few birds, or do you want to go out and hunt and shoot limits? I've got,
they're one and the same.
Well,
just how much time it takes you to get there.
Yeah, I suppose. But I mean, how many times did you limit out waterfowl hunting on the rivers this year?
One time. Good question.
And how many times did you go out hunting?
I went out, I think probably a total of 7 days this year for waterfowl.
And was that one limit with you personally, or one limit with you and your hunting partner, or how,
It was, so the day that I got a limit of ducks, we went, it was me, one of the local tax cam dealers here in Great Falls, Groves Taxidermy and Firearms, the owner of that, Travis, and one of his buddies. And we went out to a little pothole on a river that he got access to through private land, I guess. You could have accessed it from a boat launch, but you had to do miles of floating to do it. So that was a good point on the public access versus private there. But actually, it was that was one limit between us, but I shot one limit myself. And I don't know, I was the guy sitting in the middle, so I had a good advantage to the guy that was on the right, the way the birds were flying. And then I think the other gentleman, between the two of the other guys, they got a total of 3 ducks. I was shot a limit myself.
So it wasn't 3 limits on a day, or
No, we didn't all
that's the point I'm trying to make, is you can come up here and you can come to Montana and you can hunt public land for waterfowl and you can shoot. I mean, it's very rare that you get out and you don't get a duck on a day waterfowl hunting. But at the same time, if you come up with 6 or 7 guys and you're going to spend a day, unless you have got some private land tied up and you're hunting fields, in my opinion, I think we have better success in fields than water, just because we have so much open water in the state with rivers and stuff.
True.
You're probably not going to shoot 3 to 7 limits of ducks or geese in a day.
That's a good point.
There's some guys that have private ponds or warm springs on their property that never freeze over, and you get into the late months and you can just hammer the ducks down in my neck of the woods. And I'm sure it's the same in your neck of the woods, but a lot of that's on private property. But I could go out I could go out this evening, throw out a half a dozen decoys on the river and sit there with a mojo and some Cullen and probably shoot a couple of ducks. I think we might be closed on the Pacific Flyway now already. I don't remember, but
I think so.
It's a little strange. I know it's still open in Central because I was talking about doing a goose hunt this weekend with some buddies, but I just can't make it happen. So,
yeah. Are you going to that wild game feed thing this weekend?
I'm not. I've got to spend some time at home, and I've spent a lot of weekends hunting recently. So,
for sure. Well, talk a little bit about that. One of our local team members down in Billings, Montana. I don't know if he coordinated this or it's part of a gun club that Jeremy's in. Talk about that. That's a pretty cool deal that they put on.
Yeah, so basically it's the Yellowstone Hunt Club out of Billings, Montana, and it is a bunch of basically hunting buddies that try to get together and pool their resources and expand the world of hunting. So their biggest thing is to try and get people out hunting that have never hunted before. That's their main mission. And so it's one of my team members, Rich Cope, and his dad started it, and they've got a couple of guys on the board, and they've got, I can't remember, 30 or 40 members. And what their goal is just to basically go out and find people that have never hunted before and introduce them to the sport of hunting. So they do a lot of waterfowl hunting, a lot of pheasant hunting. They do big game hunting as well. But typically this weekend would be the Great Rocky Sports Show in Billings, Montana. And that's how I met these guys, is they had a booth right across from our Tacticam booth a couple of years ago when I was working on it. And they, their goal is to take and just sign up new hunters. So the idea is you pay dues to the club, and then the club purchases decoys or blinds, or they actually have a little piece of property in northeastern Montana. They put together like a paddlefish weekend where everybody goes camping and fishing. They've got some really good game processing equipment. So they take and get together. The downside for me is I'm three hours away. So to go do a bunch of stuff and hang out. But if you're in that Billings area, I definitely recommend it to anyone. That's awesome. But then what they do is, as part of their promotion, is on this weekend that's typically this sports show weekend, they do what's called a beast feast. And they take and cook up all different wild game dishes and just have a big, basically potluck dinner with all the members. And so the whole idea is to get, they go to do this Great Rocky Sports Show, get new members, and then they try and introduce people to wild game that is cooked really well. So we were discussing waterfowl, and to be honest, Rich makes some goose sliders that you can't even taste the goose in. They're fantastic.
Like ground goose?
Yeah, so he grinds it up into hamburger, and then he mixes up some bacon and some seasoning with it, and then he just fries it in a pan on the stove. So they're just cool. mini hamburgers, right? Just little sliders, and you can eat. And that's the whole idea, is they have a lot of guys kind of have their specialty in the club. They're like Andrew Lochner, one of our Tacticam dealers, who's also in the club there. He makes a really good kind of spicy dish with shredded goose and stuff like that. And like last year I had mountain lion there. I'd never eaten mountain lion before. One of the guys killed some mountain lion, and actually it tasted really good.
Nice.
So that's the whole idea of the beast feast, is everybody gets together and they cook up wild game, whether it's fish or ducks or geese or deer or any of that stuff, and tries to introduce people to their recipes on how to take and get better, or how good wild game actually can taste. So
yeah, for sure, man. And we just started a page not too long ago on Facebook called Wild Game Nation, and that was kind of the whole point of it, to start that as well, as just kind of start generating ideas and stuff of the recipes and stuff you can do. And one of my goals this year personally is, especially when it comes to red meat, I think I've eaten all my turkeys so far already, or gotten pretty close to all three of the turkeys I got this spring, or last spring. Anyway, one of my goals this year is for any of the meat that I eat, basically at home, I don't want to go out and buy beef or any red meat or do anything like that. Everything I want to eat, and now I really need to because I got a pile of it after that elk in there. But
Right.
just burn through some stuff, and I want to just learn how to cook. I'm a huge fan of like shows like the Meat Eater and stuff, and really what drew me to that when I first got into the Meat Eater was the cooking aspect of it more than anything. The guy wasn't out there needing to shoot a 300-inch whitetail like you're used to seeing in all the Midwest shows, or whatever. He was out there to kill something so he could show you how to cook the heart or all these weird things that I guess, as a hunter, I'd never really experienced. So that was really what drew me to that. And like this year, I know specifically I kept a bunch of like whole shanks. I wanted, like basically the forearm meat that normally you just kind of scrape off the silver skin and maybe get a few ounces out of that or whatever, or some people leave them in the field. But this year I kept them, like cut them off at the knees and ankles and actually froze them whole on my deer so I can cook those in different ways. And we had down at the elk camp, the cook, we called him Hammer. He was showing me some cool ways that they actually take like the neck bones and stuff. So after you've basically carved what 99% of hunters, I'm sure, of the meat off the neck and stuff would have left in the field on the bones, he cuts those vertebrae into like 3 or 4 vertebrae sections and pressure cooks it. And I mean, Jeremy can attest, he took one section of that and like something else that I normally would have left on the animal or on the carcass, I guess, in the field. I can't remember what it was, if it was up the top of the ribs or what, but I mean, you would have looked at it and said, dude, there's not a pound of meat there. And the meat that he got off of it could have fed 3 or 4 people. It was amazing.
We had 3 or 4 meal or snack sessions or lunch sessions with that shredded meat, which is something that's fantastic, and I guess something, I mean, we're totally rabbit trailing from our topic we discussed about, but we'll talk about eating wild game today because it's working. But
it's the best part after hunting season's over. Come on.
Right. So I'd have to say, I think your goal is 100% attainable if your wife is on board with eating wild game, and if she likes duck, then she's gonna have no issue with the elk you shot. But and just to kind of piggyback off of that, since my wife and I have been married, she won't listen. So close to 17 years, I'll say. I'm not going to do the math.
I got a pro tip for you. I actually had engraved on the inside of my wedding ring. I've got the date we got married on the inside, so I don't ever have to worry about forgetting.
Oh, I know the date. I just doing the math backwards. I
got it.
Yeah, it was August 24th of 2002. So
that was fast.
Yeah,
you got that down.
Right. Well, for the first few years I was married, my mom would call me up and say, "Hey, your anniversary's coming up in about 3 weeks. Better get your wife a gift." So she helped me
support.
Yeah. Oh, dude, she helped me stay out of, or she just knows how bad I am at those things. So she helped me for a while. But anyways, and since we've been married, we've only bought red meat. A limited number of times. In fact, the only time that really comes to mind is when we were having a big barbecue with a bunch of friends that was going to be 4 or 5 people and turned out to be 20 people, and we had plenty of meat in the freezer. We just didn't have enough thawed for burgers, so we stopped by on the way home. We were doing a big event and then said, come over this evening for a barbecue, and then ended up doing a lot more. But like you say, some of the things I'm looking at is shanks. I've got a whole bunch of shanks that are frozen from a bunch of whitetail and a bunch of and my elk as well. So like working those up in pressure cookers or slow cookers, or I think I'm going to get an Instapot because I heard that that's really good for those shanks as well. Versus
kind of like it blends the slow cooker and the pressure cooker concepts into one. We just got one this year, and if I don't know, because we got it as a gift. Actually, we didn't go out and buy it ourselves, but I think after looking at it, there might be different sizes of them, and I don't know what size that we have, but I would recommend you get whatever the biggest size is that they have, especially if you're going to do like shanks and stuff. And like on ours, we have. It's like the inside pot that you actually cook in is smaller than what it would look like if you were just looking at it from the outside. Like
Right.
a crock pot, you can pretty well tell how much volume you have. Like an Instant Pot, it's actually a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little bit smaller than what you would think you'd be able to get in there. So I would just, whatever size you get a big one because you'll use it.
Yeah, I think I'll get the biggest that I can for sure. But I want to try that, and I want to try smoking some stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like I've heard some other people in the industry talking about just taking like a whole front shoulder of a deer and throwing it on a smoker.
Nice.
So I'm looking at, I've got an electric smoker, which is kind of tough. I use it to make jerky and stuff, but it's real temperature sensitive depending on what rack. So I'm looking at maybe getting something, maybe a pellet grill or something like that for that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to make a ton of sausage. I want to make like bratwurst because that's the one thing I still do buy is like cheddar brats and stuff like that. So for the last few years, we've got we've got a really good place within about a half hour or 45 minutes of where I live called Sausage Equipment Supply. And it's a guy and his wife, and they just sell seasonings and all kinds of butchering stuff, grinders, all that good stuff, sausage stuffers. So I've been saving up gift certificates for the last 3 or 4 years for there. And I think get a LEM electronic sausage stuffer that I can control with my pedal and all that good stuff. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And
yeah, that's cool.
And then I'm going to can a whole bunch of meat this year too. So with the current events of everything that's happening and talking about locking up and shutting down and going to not being able to go to grocery stores, the lost art of canning has kind of been lost with our generation, I think. Luckily, my grandmother and my mother were huge canners. My grandmother grew up in Ekalaka, Montana, which is southeast corner of the state, and there's literally nothing there. And so, I actually went down to my uncle's place and hunted a bunch of whitetail down there. But they have, they were 12 miles from town. Well, back in the 30s, 12 miles from town was a long ways away, or the 40s. My grandma is like 91 years old, so she grew up. It wasn't as convenient to drive to town and go buy groceries as it is today, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
So thankfully, my mother canning with her mom and her grandmother down in Ekalaka. My mom would go spend the summers down there, so she knows how to can meat really well. So I was talking, and I actually ordered a hot plate to be able to can on because flat top stoves aren't weight rated for the canners and stuff like that, and got a big canner. And so here in the next couple of weekends, I'm planning on canning a bunch of meat. So I took a lot of that same meat that was on the shanks that's got a lot of the sinew in it, and I just diced it up in squares, and we're going to can that up. So I've got
nice.
I probably have 30 pounds of meat that's just designated for canning meat this year.
All right. So what is canning meat has been one thing that I've never in my mind found appealing. Like it kind of sounds gross if I'm being honest about it. So what does a piece of canned meat taste like? Because when you look at it, I don't know if anyone here has ever left like a cooler of meat that you've already put ice in, like for a few days, where it's like melted out and like the meat gets this like gray, pink kind of just water soaked color to it. There's nothing wrong with the meat, but it turns a totally different shade. And when I see canned meat, I instantly think of that, and it doesn't like sound like an appealing thing. What's it taste like?
So it's I guess the best way I could think to explain it is like tuna fish, except for with meat instead of fish. So therefore it's better, because I'm not a guy.
Yeah. So it doesn't have like a pickled flavor or anything. I guess that was kind of what I was envisioning.
No, I mean you can add flavors to it, but like talking with my mom, all she does is put a little bit of salt or not even anything in it. I'll probably do a few batches with some salt. I'll do some with some onions and some salt. I like salt, so it's gonna have salt in everything probably. I might even do garlic and onions and salt. And I plan on using it for lunch meat. Oh, that's the other thing I still do buy that's beef is lunch meat. So plan on using it for lunch meat, try and get away from that. and like fajitas. I know, I've read online where people take the canned meat and cook it up into fajitas and, a fajita mix or something and put that on. Or the other thing is, talking with my grandma and my uncle down in Ekalaka there in remote rural Montana as you get. A lot of things they did when they were growing up is they'd take and like cook a roast or something. Then they'd take that roast and they'd run it through a hand grinder, and they'd make like mix in like a mayonnaise or a mustard or a little relish, uh, dice up some pickles and stuff like that, and then use that as a sandwich spread.
So, nice. Like a salad.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, so it's like a deer salad sandwich, basically, right? Instead of a meat salad. So I'm gonna get a little hand crank grinder because I don't want to, bust out my big electronic grinder to grind up leftover roast or anything like that. But then just kind of just mix it up for a nice little spread on a sandwich, or you could probably even use that on your keto diet and put it on a non-carb, like a leaf sandwich or something, or whatever you use for your bread substitute,
No bread, man. You don't even have to have it. You just roll the meat and cheese up and send it down the hatch.
Yeah, you really could, So, I mean, and I guess that's the thing is, the canned meat doesn't necessarily look appealing, but in a end of the world survival scenario, let's say we don't have electricity. Well, we don't care about, how do you preserve all the meat in the freezer? There's two ways. A, you smoke it, and B, you can it. So
yeah, I'll try it this year. I've just never, like I said, I think the look of it more than anything probably just turned me off whenever I first ever saw it. My grandparents used to can a ton of stuff, and there's a chance that might be where it trickles back to. I probably saw something look like a brain sitting in a jar down in the basement somewhere.
Oh yeah,
not for me,
No, I mean it does look disgusting, and part of the problem, from what I've read too, is people say, "Oh, you definitely don't want to take that canned juice with all the good stuff and strain it out and throw it out because then you're throwing away a lot of the flavor and stuff."
Oh, I suppose.
So yeah. So after I get some canned, I'll have you over and we'll make some sandwiches or some fajitas or something. And then I'll send you home with some canned meat. So
there we go. Just cure my fear of it, and I'll smoke some, and I'll drop you off some smoked meat.
Well, yeah, for sure. We'll just kind of, and I guess the other thing is this stuff lasts forever. They say, I think reading online, they say you should eat it within 5 years or something. My grandmother has a lake house, and Helena there, and lives in town, and so my grandpa passed away a little over a year ago, I guess it was. And she took and moved from the lake house into town all the time, so she didn't have to go back and forth. And my parents were helping her move, and there was some canned meat in there that was probably, I mean, it might be close to old as I was. And
wow.
And my dad threw it out, but my grandma, when I was talking to her about canned meat, she mentioned that my dad threw it out and that it was still good to eat. She's like, she said, I know it was good, Jeremy. I'd eat it 100% if I still had it,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I guess that's
they could make a TV show out of digging out like elderly people's freezers, like our elderly now. I don't think it'll happen anymore beyond our generation, but
right,
man, like the story, like I remember helping my grandparents move, or my dad helping them move and stuff, and the stories you'd hear or things you would see dated in a freezer, like, right. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, like a frozen pizza from 1934. It's like, grandma, you got to get rid of that. What are you doing?
Well, some of it though is just the time. Like I know with my grandpa, he grew up in the Depression, so he didn't have anything in the Great Depression. He talks about taking Eddie's bread sacks and saving them and turning those in so that he could take and buy a ticket to the movie or something like that. Or
no kidding.
Andy. Oh yeah, 100%. And he and I discussed when he was still alive how we've just become such a throwaway society.
Oh, for sure.
And you think about that, and you know, what happens when your appliance goes down? We don't call it an appliance repairman anymore. We go buy a new appliance, or you've got to have the new. And I'm 100% victim of it. I've got to have the latest and greatest backpack. I've got to have the latest camouflage and best clothing and lightest rifle or biggest baddest rifle. My rifle.
Absolutely.
But you know, but you look at that and you look at, you know, I found it kind of even funny when we went down to New Mexico for our hunt, and I was like reading through the guide list, and they're like, oh, you got camo clothing, you know, we suggest this. And I really thought about it. I'm like, I don't have a great camo coat. You know, I've got really good puffy coats and stuff to keep warm. But since most of the time when I'm hunting in winter, we have to wear orange, so I have really nice warm coats, but they're not, you know, they're not camp.
They're not color coordinated. Yeah.
Right. So
how's this for a segue? I think we finally found, just throwing this out there, I don't know if you meant to, you segued perfect into what our actual topic was going to be today, or got close to it. You're grazing it.
Okay. Well, what I was talking about was, or what I was going to say is, we got down there, and what did our guides wear? You know, they wore their Carhartt sweatshirts and everything else. You know, I actually pulled out my flannel and was wearing that when I shot my elk. The day I shot my elk, because I'd planned to wear that around camp, you know, but shoot, how many guys go out in blue jeans and in our world, they go out in blue jeans in a regular, you know, Carhartt coat, and they go kill bigger bulls or more bulls than you and I ever have.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a totally different style of hunting for sure. I mean, and that's kind of what we were planning on talking about today was, you know, again, traveling back for the sales meeting, just kind of a quick introduction to where this came from. Was I was driving through northeast Iowa. So it's basically big bluff country, not what you would think of with cornfields and stuff. And it was amazing to me that the number of deer I was able to pick out that were bedded on hillsides, there was snow on the ground, but it wasn't like they were sticking out. It was like I'd spot an ear in a thicket sticking out, just bedded right up against a plum thicket, or, you know, coming down the backside of some rock bluffs, I saw some deer kind of tucked up against some rocks and different things like that. So anyway, it got me thinking about how I feel that my few years so far, 3 hunting seasons worth of Western hunting experience, has actually kind of changed for the better, I think, or just provided a different perspective that makes you an overall better hunter for just about any situation. So Jeremy and I had started talking about that, but that was one topic in there, though, like you're talking about with the clothes, you know, or, you know, just the technology changes for good or worse. Like, they're not all 100% needed necessarily to go out and actually get the job done. You know, we're in a very lucky society where we have basically any and every tool we could ever imagine for making hunting as easy as it can possibly get. But at the end of the day, you know, all the money you spend, or the least amount of money you spend, is going to get the job done if you actually know what you're doing and kind of have that skill set. But I mean, my favorite thing about moving out here, it actually teaches you, especially on the clothing side, like being a Western hunter where you're more mobile, it's a totally different ballgame than sitting in a tree stand in Iowa, where the whole entire goal of what you wear in that tree stand is to keep you warm. Like, as long as you possibly can, you want to be as warm or as cool as possible. So you have one goal in mind, either heat or, you know, temperature control. Well, right. Out west, you got to have both pretty much at any given time. Like, you've got to, you know, you go in, you know, very, very quickly. My wife and I got rid of just about everything that we had in our hunting closet for hunting clothes, because it basically became irrelevant. It's too heavy. It holds too much heat, you know, when you're moving and all these different things. So you got to train yourself how to go in cold, essentially. Like, you want to be cold when you get out of the truck. Like, that is a good thing, because you get half mile in and then your body heat's going to be soaring through the roof, and you don't want to be stopping to take clothes off or sweat. God forbid you sweat, because then your clothes are damp for the rest of the day and you get cold anyway. So right. It's you know, a whole different thing. Yeah, my favorite, I've got 3 things. I got 1 pair of pants that I wear basically every single time I go out now. I mean, they're good for, hell, I hunted antelope with them in 90-degree heat out here in the archery season. And I've worn them all the way out to like -4 degrees outside, and my legs just don't seem to get cold on me. Just learned that. But I've got three layers I wear up top. I've got a wool undershirt. I've got a wool, so it's a wool blend shirt I actually got from the Air Force. That's my mid layer, and 90% of my hunting pictures you'll see me wearing that because most of the time that's about as warm as I need to get. But then I also have the puffy jacket like you're talking about in my backpack 90% of the time, or strapped to the outside so I can put it on if I stop moving.
Right.
Hey guys, Aaron here with Praying and Slaying Podcast and Light the Fire Outdoors. I just wanted to remind you that you can find all the Praying and Slaying Podcast episodes hosted at lightthefireoutdoors.com, as well as the places that you love to listen to them for your podcast. While you're at lightthefireoutdoors.com, be sure to check out our video series. You'll find most of the videos there from the stories that you're hearing here on Praying and Slaying Podcast, as well as previous episodes before we started the podcast there, and all the Light the Fire Outdoors content. We've also got blog content from several different writers who are use the outdoor lifestyle, hunting, fishing, that kind of thing, to bring the message of God to you and kind of spread their faith message that way. That's really cool. And then while you're there, check out the Light the Fire Outdoors shop. We've got swag items, we've got books, we've got all kinds of cool stuff there. We'll be adding more as we keep moving this train along. And all the proceeds from those items does go back to conservation. It goes back to spreading the godly fire there, and it also goes back to veteran support causes as well. 3 things that are near and dear to our heart here at Light the Fire Outdoors, and we want to do our part to give back. And by supporting us, you can support those things as well. Thanks again, guys. Let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, having a good, in my opinion, a good pair of pants that if it gets wet, it will dry out. And then just the layering system. And you kind of hit a secret that not a lot of guys know. There is really, really good merino wool and base layers in military surplus. And you being on the base, we need to make sure that we touch base before, base before you leave, and you can go to the BX or PX or whatever the Air Force calls it. And
BX is better.
Okay, or you should really watch like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist up there, because when guys say, "Oh, I'm leaving Montana to go down to Florida or Texas for my next assignment," they're not going to take all their heavy winter gear to keep them warm. There's some stuff that absolutely sucks that's military, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
but like, I don't know if you noticed, but what I was wearing down in New Mexico for long johns was military stuff,
Oh, no kidding. I did it, catch that.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to steer with your long johns, you know what I mean? Ben might have been, I wasn't.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm kind of glad you did. Oh, yeah, I did notice that. It would have made me wonder a little bit. But for years I grew up hunting it with wool shirt and blue jeans and then boots. And I would say now that I'm older, the things that I like or I think about more, and that we'll just kind of tie this into, just how we can be a better game hunter or Western experiences that make you a better game hunter, better game hunter, is taking and good boots. I think I hate having cold feet. So I try and have good boots, and I usually probably wear a little warmer boot than is needed. But also not taking, and I don't know if you notice, or maybe you and I did talk about it down in New Mexico, but I have my boots and I lace them up, but then I loosen up 1 or 2 levels on my boots for when I'm not doing a whole bunch of hiking. And if I'm going to go on a long hike up the side of a hill where I need good ankle support, I can tighten that down and
I noticed that. So for me, when I put my boots on, I lace them all the way up to the top, and like you said, a good waterproof, I would almost say uninsulated might even be better. Like the Western boots, if you get into that Western boot side, I'd say they're boots that would work in any hunting situation, but they have different things that are built around the Western hunter, which is mobility, stiffness of the sole, ankle support is number one. Especially in a mountainous or really rolling terrain. But yeah, I noticed with you. So for me, like I get good ankle support boots. I lace them all the way up to the top, and my goal is to basically keep my ankle as straight as possible, almost like a cast. Because what it turns into when you're going up and down hills is it basically is like you're walking upstairs instead of your calves doing all this work like pulling your body up every single time you go. I mean, you do one hunt with a bad pair of ankle supported boots or a boot that's got a ton of flex in it. And the first time I went on with you guys, I was wearing my hiking boots actually. And that's where I first noticed that. And now it's like, okay, I'll wear my Crispies all the way through basically most of the season. And they're a little too warm for early season stuff. But when you get in that rolling terrain, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and so I have 2 pair of boots, and I've got an uninsulated pair of Kenetreks, which is kind of crispy. Kenetreks, Crispy, Chenets, I think they're all probably made in the same place and with little different lasts, and
they all look basically identical.
Yeah, they're all basically the same type of boot, and I think find which one fits you the most comfortably and go for it. But
for sure.
That's what I wear for 95% of my hunting. And then I've got like some 600 gram lacrosse boots that are a similar boot. They're not quite as good a support as my Kenetreks, but they are insulated. And I wear that late season or if I'm going to be doing a lot of glassing or something. But I take and start out and I lace up my boots just like you do every morning, nice and tight. But then, on your Crispies or on these mountain style boots, you have 3 or 4 rows of laces that are just hooks. You're not actually lacing the laces through the eyelets. So what I'll do is I'll tighten them all the way up and then hike in where I'm going. And then I'll take and reach down and unhook that top level of laces on my boots and kind of loosen the tongue so I get better circulation to my feet.
So I suppose let's because your feet, and actually that hunt in New Mexico is the first time I've ever really ran into it. My feet would get cold and I didn't feel like we were exerting ourselves at all. Like not at all, but not to an extent where I would have expected my feet to be cold. Or get cold from sweat or even, but when you get heat in your boot at all, if you got, and actually our guide was the one that was telling me, they recommend wearing like a single thin pair of socks in your boots, especially if you're gonna be running around. I'm like, how does that make sense? Because the more insulation you got, the better off you're going to be keeping your feet warm. But the problem you run into is when you're moving that much, even the tiniest bit of moisture from sweat in there, and I had wool socks on against my feet the whole time. That water gets cold way faster than your foot does. And so when you're standing on a bed of snow and the outside air is 2 degrees, your boot is going to cool off. Well, then the moisture inside your boot is going to cool off way faster than your foot, which just creates this cold barrier around your foot. Your foot gets cold, which is really interesting. So, with you lacing your boots like that, I suppose it probably helps out a lot with moisture control too.
Yeah, it sure definitely could, and I don't know if the other thing is like on a multi-day hunt, taking your boots and drying them out,
Yeah.
So a few tricks that down in New Mexico, we had a stove. So I don't know if you noticed, but I started after a couple of days taking my boots and putting them under the stove and opening them up so they dry out. But then if I'm backpacking, I'll actually take handheld heaters, the little hot hands or whatever, the little inch. And I'll take, and when I go jump in my bed at night or my sleeping bag, I'll throw hot hands down in my boots, and that heat helps radiate the boots and A, makes them a little warmer when I wake up in the morning, but B, it helps them dry out. So
that's I don't know. Yeah, that's a pro tip of pro tips. This podcast is officially monetized. You're gonna have to pay by episode to get that type of insight. I think that's amazing.
Well, so that's just something that and I even do that in early, Labor Day weekend when it's super cold, super early, because I naturally get cold feet. I just am one of the guys that get cold feet, and I hate having cold feet because it's uncomfortable and it's the hardest to take and warm up. If I'm cold, if I'm cold on my core section or my hands are cold or anything, I just go find a steep hill and I hike up it, and that warms me up.
Well, yeah. And for some of these guys, we're talking comparing to the Midwest, these boot tips, actually, this could be just, having that tree stand experience from hunting growing up there. I think, it almost would seem smarter. A lot of guys will do it for scent control already. They'll hike in, maybe in base layers or maybe in a totally different outfit, have their hunting clothes, in their backpack, their top layers. And once they get up in the tree stand, they'll actually get dressed to just eliminate a lot of the scent issues. When you're stationary, scent's a lot bigger deal than when you're moving anyway. And so
or at least you can't control it as well as you can when you are moving on an animal like out west or whatever. But with boots, even that might even be to keep your feet, basically hike in with your feet cold if you're going to be wearing, because most of the hunting boots out there, they're designed to keep your feet warm. I mean, as much insulation as you can pack into them, the better. Guys are wearing thick socks with that, so you might even be better off just hiking in if you're going to be, especially ground blind or tree stand hunting, just in a totally separate pair of maybe hiking boots or something, and then changing into a warm pair of boots, because then, but hopefully the moisture is not built up on your socks from sweat at that point.
Yeah, I think in a Western hunting situation, though, taking another pair of boots is a lot of extra weight.
Out west for sure. I was talking like Midwest style. Like if you're going to be sitting all day, you could afford to carry an extra 3 or 4 pounds in boots in with you.
Right.
Just to stay warm.
Also sometimes wear a sock liner when I'm hiking in, and then when I get to where I'm going, I'll take that sock liner off and I'll just throw on a pair of good socks. Or I actually like synthetic blend more than wool, because it helps helps keep the moisture away from my foot. I think I am a little warmer in those socks there, but
yeah. Well, and then so kind of gear obviously is one thing. I think it helps you. The one thing it helped me with is knowing what the line is between having too much stuff and having just the right equipment for the hunt you're going to do. I mean, that was huge for me, like learning that. And I mean, I've got a system now that I could probably go anywhere in the United States or Canada with, that I just know, okay, if the weather says it's going to be this, here's what I need. I started out throwing two knives in there in case I needed the extra knife, or now I just carry a knife with extra blades, and all this stuff that you just, at the end of the day, and I've read a ton of magazine articles about it too. You really have to learn your system and get comfortable with it, and then basically it just turns into muscle memory, because you know what pocket everything's in that you need, and you just rock and roll. But as far as some of the over general tips and tricks from that, kind of Jeremy's got a lifetime of it out west, and I've got a few years under my belt that we've kind of learned is, and Jeremy can speak a lot more to it, I think, with spotting animals. Like I remember in a tree stand, just thinking about the differences. When you're tree stand or ground blind hunting, you're really relying on animal movement to pick that animal out. If and I don't know how many times I've had deer, and even in that situation, movement doesn't always tell you where they're at, but you catching a glimpse of a deer is typically how you end up spotting them, from a tree stand or from a ground blind or from a stationary position. If they're sitting still, that's their best defense, because they're built to blend into their environment anyway, moving or not. But when they're stationary, it's definitely a big thing. And one thing kind of driving through that bluff country and being able to pick those animals out, driving 60 miles an hour down the road, none of them are moving. And I think a big part of that is you just really teach yourself how to look for parts of the animal, or look for shapes, or look for just things that you'll catch at a quick glimpse that tell you, oh, that's different than what I've been looking at for the last 25 minutes or whatever. And I know Jeremy spent a lot more time behind glass than I have, but that's, I think, been a big help for me. And even spotting game out west, I mean, you have to know how to do that, because if they're bedded down, there could be 300 deer sitting in front of you in a sage flat, and you'll have no idea they're there until one of them stands up, unless you can kind of learn to pick out antlers or pick out ears or something in that brush that's different.
Yeah, so I think you just nailed it the head there, and just picking out something different. I think the biggest thing is having a trained eye for looking for wildlife, right? Yeah. So I'm guessing you grew up in Iowa, you didn't necessarily always driving down the road look for deer, where in Montana you're constantly searching, or I'm constantly searching and looking for deer or elk or moose or bears or what, so much of our game is spot and stalk, and the key, if you don't spot it, you can't go stalk it, so,
right.
And there's so much wide open space, and so much, I mean, animals will travel 4 or 5 miles a day. I mean, the elk I shot down in New Mexico, we watched from probably 5 miles away till where it came to us, to where we could intercept it, so if you're not having that trained eye and looking for animals, and So I'd say, what I try to do, and what my dad told me when I was younger is take and look for something that's out of the ordinary. Look for movement, look for legs, look for shapes. There's
Mm-hmm.
not very triangles in there's not very many triangles out in nature. So if you look for a triangle, that might be the head of an animal, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of triangular shaped. Look for colors that don't match up. Look for the white butt of a mule deer. Look for the white of antelope. Look for the big yellow patch of hair that might be that elk.
And the giant yellow school bus.
Yep, giant yellow school bus.
And even like on mule deer and whitetail, they're pretty universally colored. I mean, everybody kind of knows the brown or tans of a whitetail, but mule deer, and Remy Warren actually pointed it out in his podcast. Was it Going the Distance or Cutting the Distance?
Cutting.
I listened to that every once in a while. He was talking about spotting game just in general, like general tips and stuff. And I never noticed it until he said it. Like if you look at a mule deer, it screams gray. Like it looks like a slate gray. I mean, they're beautiful, but they just got a real gray tint to them, which blends in perfect, like in sagebrush or even in pines and stuff like that. But he said that they have more of an orange tint to them. Like if you're scanning a sage flat and everything is going to be that same sage color, or add snow into it or whatever. But the first couple of mule deer I saw after that in those scenarios, they actually have more of an orange tint to them. Like it's kind of interesting. They'll be more orange than everything else around them. Now it might be subtle depending on the distance, but the further away from you they are, like the more that orange actually contrasts, I think, with the sage that you're looking at. So just color differences, even just slight color differences will help point something out.
Yeah, and I think just practice too. I mean,
for sure.
That's the cool thing is I've got Joey, my son's 2 years old, so he loves spotting deer. So now when we're driving down the road, what do? We play spot the deer.
Mm-hmm.
Training young. And I think that's the coolest thing. I mean, so much of this fall, I wasn't able to bow hunt this year because I had a son in late August, and my wife had a C-section and stuff like that. But Joey, my older son, and I we went out when my younger son Jack was napping. Joey and I went out to the mountains and we just drove around and looked for animals. That's all we, and so much of that just time spent looking helps keep your eyes trained to be able to spot animals. And I think, like you said, you went back to Iowa and that changed the perspective, and you were able to see animals that you didn't see before. And I just think of it as a treasure hunting, treasure hunt while you're hunting, just trying to spot stuff. And I guess the other thing is this doesn't need to be applied 100% to a glassing scenario. The older I get, I just wish I would have learned things or known things now, or known what I know now when I was, 19, let's say, with all kinds of energy and could run up mountains. I think so much of my younger years I spent running by elk, or running by animals, just because I was like, I want to get to this spot and I want to glass. Now I look at it saying, I start hunting when I leave the truck. A lot of, 3 or 4 years ago, I quit hiking in the dark for the most part. I still do that every once in a while, but I think that I got tired of guys shooting stuff right out of the parking lot behind me when I got up my butt and walked right past game.
No, that's a great point. And really, I mean, in the Midwest, it applies to, you got tree stands and, you're hiking in, and, I kind of went in reverse. Actually, I felt like I was a lot better hunter when I first started because I kind of got into it on my own anyway. So I was, going off magazine articles I read or TV shows that I was watching and tips and tricks you'd learn there. But I actually would go in like super slow to a tree stand, which as I got older and hunted more, the mission kind of changed, almost reverse of what you're saying in that scenario is running, basically getting to that tree stand as fast as you can because you need to be there early and you need to let the animals kind of settle down and come, then they'll start moving again. But I couldn't tell you how many times with a bow in my hand early season, I'd sneak up on deer like not trying to, just they would end up being there, and I would have either busted them out, and I would have never known they were there if I would have went in too fast, or or you could go right by him, because if the deer's smart, he'll stay bedded, he won't move, so you don't see him. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Then moving out here, though, like you said, that truck door shuts, but the first thing you do is glass the surrounding area around you real quick, or sufficiently, to make sure you're not going to bump something out right away, because it happens all the time. A deer could be standing there staring at you, getting out of your truck, and you just never see him, and you would never see him if you just busted out or run into where you wanted to go.
Yeah, and I guess that that brings up another point, is to when I hunt, I always try to be ready.
Yeah.
I see some of these guys that go in, and they have these great big backpack carriers full and everything else, but it's not accessible. It's not easy to, what happens if you come around the corner, and maybe I've hunted too many years, and I'm just to the point, I'll shoot it. If I can shoot an animal from the parking lot, man, I'm doing it. I will take the easy ones, because I have hiked way too many miles and not had it happen, or way too many miles for the harder ones that I have no problem hunting private land. I have no problem shooting them, legally, of course, but shooting them 50 yards off the road or whatever the rules are to get. If I can make it happen, man, I'm making it happen.
My buddy that I hunted with most of the year this year, Dan. He's got a motto that the further away from the truck it is, the bigger it's got to be. And Jeremy and John both know this about me. I love shooting big animals with the best of them, but if I find something that trips my trigger, that, whatever, I'm more of like getting out there, and I could get an animal because the story was cool more than I'd wait for big antlers. Let's put it that way. And anyway, this year, Jeremy was proud of me because I kept my tag in my pocket for my buck until the last day of season. And then the only reason I shot the buck I did, he's a trophy to me, but not a trophy caliber deer, was because he had matching drop tines on both sides of his horns, which was pretty cool. I was like, okay, I'll take that buck on the last day. But anyway, his motto is the closer to the pickup it is, his standards go down for how big it has to be. And there's some times where, like you said, you take the easy ones because you can get them, and you don't know when the next chance you're going to get is.
Yeah. And I think we have a huge movement in hunting that it's like, we got to do public land, and we got to hike 18 miles to take and haul something back out on our pack 13 times to get it done. And I'm like, man, it is still hunting, taking and doing it, the old, how we grew up in Montana, you drive roads until you spot something, and then you try and find a way to sneak up on them, and you sneak up on them and try and close the deal. And, that is still hunting. It's a different experience than backpack hunting. But that's like saying, tree stand hunting isn't the same sitting over a food plot. Well, that's still hunting. It's just a different way of doing it, in my opinion.
100%. And I think if you've done it with a deer or any animal, if you've packed an animal out on your back one time, I think it just takes once to really show a guy or gal how much work that actually is. And it's not like it's physically possible. I'll be honest, I don't think moving anywhere unless it's illegal from here on out. My wife's in the Air Force. We'll bounce around for the next 15 years or so. I don't think I'll shoot a deer in any place or any animal and probably not pack it on my back. Now, if I can drive right up to it, great. But with a deer especially, I can manage it. I can put a whole deer in my backpack, and I can get out, and I don't have to mess with anything when I get home other than the meat. I love that. I don't like having a carcass to deal with when I get home. Now that I've experienced not having to and all that, just leave it in the field. Like I said, if it's legal, I don't know if other states have rules against that or not, but either way, like it's so much more efficient in my mind to do that. But if you've done that, and I would put the threshold probably at a mile. If you've got a mile with 100 pounds of meat on your back, especially if you've got gear to go back and get, it's a one-time experience. I think really teaches you the amount of work you're about to do. And I think doing that once, and especially in a controlled fashion, like with a deer, it should paint a picture for you. Like you're talking about, you get an elk or a moose or anything bigger than a deer, realistically, down in the backcountry and you got to go further than about a mile to do it, you're going to be putting a lot of wear and tear on your body, and you put yourself at a big risk too of things happening. You could hurt yourself. You run out of daylight, you got to go back and get it. Then you got to think about predators in that situation. I mean, it's a big undertaking for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I kind of I look at it differently, I guess. And it's just, like I say, a different method. I try not to carry it on my back unless I have to, and for me, I guess I feel like I get a little better yield if I can cut it up, off the carcass, as opposed to trying to do it in the field. I get cleaner meat out of the deal. Mm-hmm. After seeing what Hammer showed us, it's like, man, I can utilize more meat.
Well, yeah, now that's true.
Right.
I will say that Hammer changed my mind a little bit on some of that. To change the perspective, because now it's like, okay, do I carry a Sawzall in with me with two, 20-watt lithium batteries so I can, chop the neck up and take the bones home and all that? Or, you definitely think about more. Like, yeah, you probably do get a lot more meat off of it. But you do,
well,
if you butcher deer, you do a pretty good job in the field of, if you're deboning it great, or a lot of times you end up just leaving the legs, you cut the joints off and you take the legs out whole. And if you're keeping the ribs, those can come out whole and that kind of stuff. But otherwise it's, I don't know. I guess I don't see it that much different, but I would agree. Yeah, your yield's better. Your meat can be cleaner if you don't be careful in the field with it, for sure. You get dirt and grass and everything else stuck to it by the time you're home.
I guess the biggest thing for me is the meat. The meat is cleaner. For sure.
I would agree.
I not taken the boneless method or anything out in the field, and I've taken tarps and laid it down on the ground and all that stuff. But you always have wind, you have dust, you have I mean, it's takes and creates another set of challenges. I'm not
especially
against it.
Yeah.
Like I say, I don't like dragging deer. If I can't get to it with a game.
And I think that was more of my point. I despise dragging deer. If I don't, now that I know the other method, you can carry it out. It's like, if I don't have to drag this sucker, I don't want to.
Yeah, and I say I'd put my threshold at about a mile. If it's close, if it's further than a mile from a truck, I'm finding a way to get it out. If it's and I guess that differs on deer and elk too. If it's a and it depends on if we have snow or not. I utilize sleds a lot, otter sled type deals to take and drag stuff out whole on snow, because you don't need a lot of snow to make that happen. But I also have the advantage. I hunt private land where you can sometimes access a little closer with a vehicle too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. No, it's definitely a different experience. And I think one of the other advantages I see, and probably the biggest advantage, it just thinking, kind of brainstorming it as I started thinking along those lines driving through Iowa there. It's like the ability we have, and it's more like it's a spot and stock stuff. So like you were talking about already, you spot that animal regardless of where it is from you, and your mind's formulating a plan of how do I get there without it knowing I'm there, and get to within whatever you're doing. If you're rifle hunting or bow hunting, you've got different things you got to overcome. And the whole mentality behind the tree stand style thing is you're kind of limited. Like, you're stuck in one place. If the animal doesn't do what you think it's supposed to do, then it has control of the situation. And I feel like in the Western scenario, or just the spot and stock method, wherever you are, which I feel like is the majority of what we do out here, is you have full control of that situation. You have control of the wind, because you can always utilize your position to put the wind in your favor. It doesn't have to be a very specific set of circumstances for you to go hunt the specific tree stand or the specific deer. If you see them and you can go after them, you can play those factors into your favor. And you always have, in my mind, you kind of always have the upper hand, because you can utilize a game plan. It's not always going to work out, and the deer is going to bust you sometimes and all that, but at least you have full control of that game plan. And you learn a lot more, I think, when you have those busted opportunities, because every single time you learn something that you're going to take to that next hunt and not make that same mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I guess for me, it's the outsmarting the deer that's outsmarting predators every day of their life.
That's a great point.
It's taking and saying, sometimes, and I guess part of it too, in my experience, is knowing when it's not worth trying. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You see an animal out there and they're at the top of the hill and the wind's blowing right to their face and there's no way to get, intercept them in the position they're at without blowing them out. So it's trying to take and create that best set of circumstances to be successful, and I think that's the, just the technique. And I guess some of the things that Western hunters, I guess I don't worry about scent control. I went through a stage in my life where I was watching hunting shows, and it was, mainly guys sitting in tree stands and stuff like that. And they were 100% worried about, well, all scent control bottle does in a Western hunting scenario creates more weight for you to carry. The biggest scent control for me is learning to read the wind and learning the thermals and what the wind is going to do with different scenarios. And some of that has been long range shooting has helped me with that a bunch. But the other part is just, and I guess the biggest thing with long range shooting that's helped me is just grabbing grass, throwing it up in the air, letting it drop to the ground, seeing the direction it goes, and then holding the wind meter, seeing how much that wind is in miles per hour, and then look at what's happening with the wind where I'm at, what's happening with the wind where the animal's at, and what's happening with the wind between me and the animal. So it's something that, thermals are a huge thing in mountain hunting. And, you have the beginning of the day or before, the coldest part of a 24-hour period from 12 midnight to 12 midnight is going to be the 20 minutes before sunrise. And that's just the coldest part of the day. Seems to be all the time. So at that point in time, the air is going to be dropping. So the air is going to go from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And then you're going to have that's going to probably continue in hunting season till mid-morning. If it's late rifle where it's wintertime, that could even be a little, and it's a cloudy day, that can take and be even longer. Of course, there's variables that affect that, right? So if you're looking at a south-facing slope that's dark rock that has sunshine and it's a sunny day, that area, those thermals might be raising up. So, and if your approach to that animal, let's say you go above that open patch of shale or something, there's a timber band or something, you got to be aware that the thermals from that open timber, even though you and the timber might think that it's still going down, it actually could be going up and taking your scent up to that animal. So the thermals, sight, smell, sound, and just knowing how to approach that animal. And I guess the other thing, now that I'm older, the shortest distance isn't always the right answer.
Oh, 100%. I was just thinking the same thing. This year we had I drew a 417 unit 417 mule deer doe tag, and when I was out there, I ended up locating some animals from a highway, ironically enough, that were on a piece of state ground, and I found access to that state ground. And from the truck, the deer were, when I first parked the truck from there, they were about 500 yards, which my comfortable shooting zone, that would be like my max. But I was going to try to get closer anyway. Well, the way the terrain laid out and the wind was blowing straight from the truck to them, they weren't reacting to the truck being there. I'm sure right off a highway, they're used to cars and stuff going by all the time. But with the way the wind was blowing, it was blowing basically a little off, just a few degrees off of them, but it was blowing basically their direction. And the direction I had to get to make any kind of a move on these things was going to be walking my wind right through there. And so I actually had to wait for them to go. They were about 800 yards out when I could finally make my move. And so I went after them just kind of on a straight line because they were out of sight. And I got to where I was about 450 yards, which was still stretching it for me a little bit, just comfortability wise. And I was sitting there watching them. Well, I ended up having make a long story longer on this, I guess. We're talking about distance. I ended up having to walk basically a half moon and climb up a couple ridges, which ended up on my Onyx tracker. I walked 1.5 miles to get to where I could get to 200 yards from these animals and end up making a shot. But it had to do because the wind, their line of sight, and just the way the terrain and everything laid out. I mean, that was the path that was ultimately best. I mean, I got it done, made a great shot, and she didn't, in the words of Brett Daniel, she didn't go 20. So it was definitely a cool hunt. But yeah, I mean, distance isn't, like you said, line of sight distance is definitely a factor when you're hunting, because that's definitely not always the best way.
And I guess the best way to help mentally with that challenge is, I think, okay, if I walk 1.5 miles instead of 500 yards, I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to notch that tag, and I'm not going to have to walk after another mule deer doe in that unit anymore. Whereas if I walk 300 yards to try and get closer, or 200 yards and blow that deer out, then I walk back to the truck empty-handed. And how many times do I have to do that before the 1.5 mile hike would have paid off?
Great point. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the best example, because you were hunting a state land section that was probably 1 mile by 1 mile square, where you turn that scenario into a bigger chunk of land, where you hike in 1 or 2 miles to your hunt area, and then try to make that stock and blow that opportunity. And it doesn't take very many of those to take and start going back in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you can magnify that exponentially on some of the pieces out here, even private land. You get big chunks like that. It's just like you said, it's like the bigger the piece, the more exponentially important it is to really lay out your plan. Because those animals don't stop. They'll go until they don't feel threatened anymore. And sometimes that's 300 feet. Sometimes that's 3 miles. It just really depends on the situation and how hard they've been hunted.
Right. And so and I guess the other thing that you think of is every time you do that and you blow an opportunity, you're educating that animal.
Good point. Yeah.
So there's and I guess I even try to apply that to different hunting scenarios as well. Waterfowl hunting comes to mind. It's like, if you can take and you get birds working some days, and they're late season birds, and they're flaring off just at that tip, that range, they're not liking something. Well, if you shoot at them and you have a low probability of hitting them, all you're doing is teaching that bird that they were right to think that they were flaring those decoys. And you're helping support the ammo industry. And trust me, some days, I'm not saying that it's not going to be the last hunt of the season, and I drove 5 hours away to go hunt, so doggone it, I'm going to get some shooting in. I've had those days myself, but at the same time, if I'm hunting an area and I'm going to be there for 3 or 4 days on a waterfowl hunt, and I'm not necessarily on the exact same area, but I'm going to take and make sure I've got a highest probable percentage of shooting those animals than not. There's been times early season where I've had large groups of geese come in, 20 or 30 birds, and there's 2 or 3 of us hunting, and we'll just let them land and mill around and let them fly off, because we can't, at most we're going to kill 9 birds out of that scenario, and that's if we shoot 100% perfect. Well, then you have 16 birds that or 14 birds that just got educated.
Right.
So now late season, you have less opportunities and more birds are educated, so bigger flocks come in. But really, what I like to see when I'm waterfowling is the 3 or 4 packs of birds that are coming in, that you have a good chance of shooting all the birds in the group.
Definitely.
Or if you don't shoot all the birds in the group, even if you shoot, let's say, a triple, 3 birds come in and you shoot and you miss all 3 birds, well, there you just educated 3 birds instead of 15.
Well, and that's like, and I think that applies to just about everything. My brother likes telling a story about when I was growing up in Iowa shotgun season. One year he went with us, and basically I was with this other kid in the group, and we were cruising this river bottom trying to push into this bigger, like a creek bottom that flowed into a river bottom. And so we had this creek kind of to ourselves. He was on one side, I was on the other. Well, my brother was on a different finger. And so he was hearing the audible version of what was going on, not seeing what was going on. But anyway, so he hears the world light up with gunshots. And he likes to say that I like shooting entire families of deer instead of letting them, just taking one out of the group and letting the rest go. But I attribute it to the same thing as, if there's 5 deer there and there's 5 in Iowa, you can party hunt, by the way. So groups of does come in. A lot of times you let them have it, because you don't know if other guys are going to get an opportunity. And then you do your tags at the, make sure you have, how many tags you have, I guess, and just keep tallies on it. But basically, there was a group of deer that came running by me on my side of the creek, and I had all 5 of those deer down. I think it was like the last night, I think we had 8 doe tags left in the group, and ended up taking out 5 deer with about 8 shots. But the way my brother tells it is that I like to take whole families out, but I just look at it as the education piece. None of those does got away to go tell the rest of the deer how we were doing things.
Exactly. So, and that's the goal, is just to outsmart the animals.
Exactly.
I mean, for me, that's what makes hunting fun,
Oh yeah. Yep.
And the scenario, you kind of give me a hard time because I don't shoot bucks a lot, and that's fine. I don't. But and I guess the biggest reason for that is I got to the point where I wanted to see more and more quality, bigger deer.
Yeah.
Now this year I shot a buck because I had my 2-year-old with me, and I wanted to shoot a buck and have that opportunity. But a lot of times I'll hunt. I do it for 2 reasons, and one is because I'd rather, instead of shooting a little fork-headed horn or what I'd call a breadbasket 4-point or an 8-point for you Midwestern guys, I'd rather take and let that deer have a chance to get bigger, and maybe be able to shoot them in future years, or maybe allow somebody else to shoot them in future years, is usually how it goes here in Montana. Because we don't have farm pattern deer and all that stuff. Then the other part of that is I'll shoot a doe on the last day of the season, and a lot of people won't. They're like, why do you shoot does? We should only shoot bucks. But for me, I'm hunting for meat. The horns don't matter. You do get more meat off of a mature buck than you do a doe. But shoot, if you shoot a 3-year-old doe, it's probably better eating than a 5-year-old or 4.
And you're doing your part for conservation. I see a bunch of people online talking about that more recently than a lot of times. It seems like I've seen more arguments, especially on Montana pages. Guys arguing the fact that you should just never shoot a doe point blank period because it hurts the population. And I would 100% argue that it manages your population more than anything. And, that one guy that shoots a doe is not going to outweigh the 20 guys that don't. I mean, that's the way it's going to be every year.
Well, and if you're going to use that argument, then you shouldn't drive a car because you might hit a deer. And I would be interested to know the statistics, but I bet you in Montana there's more deer killed by vehicles than there are by hunters.
Oh, I know in Iowa that's 100% true. It's the number 1 insurance claim in the state of Iowa is deer car collisions.
Yeah, just know driving around, it's like, I was driving to church on Sunday and saw a deer on the side of the road, So
how many could we have hit on the way to New Mexico? Quite a few.
Right. Well, in Wyoming, we could have hit a lot, but Wyoming's doing a lot of projects where they're making overpasses for deer to take and try and reduce.
I've seen that. Yeah, we've got a couple here between here and Missoula and Montana. Yep. Here we've got a couple that I've seen too. High fence along the road, and then you got a couple different passes under the road, every couple miles or so.
Yeah. So.
Well, cool, man. Well, we're hitting about 1:30 mark, so we'll let you guys get back at it. But just a lot of things to talk about here, and it'll probably extend into other episodes, I think, with just, I think hunters as a community, there's a lot we can learn from all the different scenarios, but there's just different things, and sharing information, I think that'll help anybody be a better hunter regardless of situation. But just some things that we were thinking about and had notes on, just from the Western experience, it might help out people in the Midwest or just hunting in general. So.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, thanks, Aaron. It was good visiting with you, and we'll do it again next week for sure.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. We'll take it easy, and we'll chat to you later.
All right.
Thanks again, everybody, for listening to the Praying and Slaying podcast. If you like what you hear on Praying and Slaying, be sure to give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform that you listen to us on, and be sure to check us out at www.lightthefireoutdoors.com, where you can find all the episodes as well as other videos and other outdoor faith-based content. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Light the Fire Outdoors. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to getting you on the next one.